Well, good morning, friends. We're glad you're here this morning. It's a beautiful Sabbath out there. There's a little chill in the air, which there should be in the first week of December. We'd expect that. And happy to have you here. Also glad to have those of you who are online. We're glad you could join us too. And we are in lesson number 10 of this quarter. Not many left. And today we'll study about education in arts and sciences. Very interesting lesson. So any prayer requests this morning? Anybody? Our children, yes, good, yeah. Our church, right? Anybody who's been exposed to COVID, yes, Fascian.
And the ones that are discouraged.
Yeah, the ones who are discouraged, indeed, yes. We need to pray for all of them.
Yes.
So, well, let's bow our heads then and have a word of prayer before we begin. Father, we are so grateful to be here together, not only here in the sanctuary, but together online too, via the internet. And we pray that as we have joined here to study your word, that your Spirit would join with us, lead our discussion, impress us of clear and present truth, and prepare our minds for what is soon to come on this earth. And you have heard the prayer requests that have been made. We're praying for our children, for those who are discouraged, for those amongst us who, and not just amongst us, but who have been exposed to this dreadful plague that has struck the entire world, this COVID. And we pray that you would especially be with those who have lost loved ones, that you'd comfort them, and that they might be reminded that you are the King of life, and that very soon you'll be coming to give that life back to those who love you. And so join with us, please. Send your Spirit in great measure this morning. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, friends. Our memory verse for this week is from Psalm 19, verse 1. And most of us know this by heart. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament shows his handiwork. Interesting. Last night, Penny was practicing, and so I thought, well, I'm just going to turn the TV on without sound, and because I like to hear her practice, and I'm going to look for something in nature. And don't you know, I turned on YouTube, and I came across the results that Hubble has sent back. With all of the beauty that is out there, and it is spectacular. I'm trying to think, one of the galaxies, and I don't even know if it was our own, and it could have been, because there was so much there. When Penny finished practicing and came back, I turned the sound on a little bit, and it talked about that portion of the galaxy being 1,300 light years across. So it takes light 1,300 times 186,000 miles per second to get from one end to the other. And then it showed Orion, which is actually, the Orion Nebula is kind of a birthplace of stars. Just, beautifully, wonderfully amazing. And all the color that's put with it is colorized, the gases, and it's just beautiful. So I recommend for you, if you can, to watch that, see some of what Hubble has done for us. Anyway, they do declare the glory of God. And the amazing thing about that is that, it seems that there are two sides to education. There is God's side, and then there's the scientific side. And science seems very reluctant, most of science, I should say, seems very reluctant to recognize God's part, when we all know it's pretty simple. Starts with Genesis 1, verse 1. In the beginning, God created. Okay? And it seems to me that if I were a scientist and things were inexplicable about the beginnings of things, that would be a great place to start. And from there, go on, But many refuse to do that. But it says a simple incorporation of Scripture in a textbook lesson is only a small part of true education. And so what this lesson is doing, what this is pointing out for us, is that true education actually saves and redeems, doesn't it? It does not just inform us about things and how they were made and all that, okay? But true education keeps God at the forefront of all learning, all right? It says that the author says at the bottom of, it's the second to the last paragraph on our opening on Sabbath afternoon's lesson. For such an education, being, it says salvific, which is a word for, causing salvation, and also redemptive, inform the teaching of every discipline, from humanities to molecular biology. Without it, we can lose sight of God's enormity and of his love and of his beauty and, in fact, of his beautiful creative works, okay? His sovereignty as creator and sustainer of our world, okay? Let's move on to Sunday's portion, all right? Opening statement on Sunday's portion, the Lord alone. It says, the author says, there is evidence of the living God in all of his creation. Now, we all believe that. Let's talk a little bit about how that's so. How can you say that there is evidence of the living God in all of creation? How can the author say that? How could we say that? Why do I say that? I see evidence of God's creative power in nature. How do we explain that? How do you explain that the leaves that are all falling off the trees will never come back, okay? And yet, they're a part of what's going to happen in the spring when new leaves come out. How do you explain that? That they are the fertilizer that helps to bring back in the spring the evidence, okay? The beauty that you see just in the color alone at this time of year, well, almost gone now, but boy, oh boy, we were over at Tom and Jeanette's house this last week. They got a couple of crepe myrtles out in their front yard that were just like on fire with color, just absolutely stunning, beautiful, and it just makes you believe. And when you look at these leaves, when you compare the leaves, every leaf on that tree is unique. There's a little bit of difference in every single one of them, even in the color.
Well, that's true, but there's also, what's really fascinating, there's a mathematical sequence to everything. And there's two laws that are part of that they find everywhere. One's called Fibonacci Sequence, which is found in blood vessels, in tree leaves, in the forest, in nature, in seashell. It's the way it expands from a small thing to the large. It's a numerical sequence found everywhere. The other one's called Benford's Law. If you don't know these, look them up.
Benford, like?
Benford, it was a mathematician 100 years ago, but they found number sequences. Like, if you look at populations and all this stuff, or elections, or they find this in the stars and the counts. Whenever you count things, you would think the number 1 and the number 9 would show up an equal number of times because there's 10 numbers. Yeah. But it doesn't. Number 1 shows up about 30% of the time. Number 2 shows up about 20% of the time. Number 3, and they find that everywhere in the stars, in the populations. It's called Benford Sequence. And
how do you spell his name?
Benford.
Benford.
But it is, you cannot have these precise mathematical things occurring everywhere without some type of design.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it amazes me that science doesn't really see that. They see it as random. No, this isn't random. And this is where Benford proves there is no true randomness in life anywhere. We think things are random, but there are patterns in everything we do. The population counts of cities follow this law. The way we tend to congregate and do things is all in patterns that we don't really understand or notice. But they're there. And when those patterns are violated, we don't like it. It seems out of place.
Out of place. So tell us a little more about Benford. What do you know about him? She?
What he saw was this. I saw this on this was on a Netflix thing, but it was fascinating. But back years ago, they used to have books that had numerical tables in them, like multiplication tables and stuff like this, because you didn't have computers or calculators.
Yes.
What he noticed, the first few pages of the book was much more worn than the back pages. People were looking up stuff just in the front and not in the back. And he started looking at and come to find out, things weren't as random as they seemed. When you start looking at sequences and stuff, the number 1 is used much more than the number 2, and it's used much more than the number 3, everywhere in life.
Imagine.
Wow. And they actually use this to find tax cheats. They use this in elections to see if things don't look right, because
they're using them right now?
Yeah, if it doesn't follow, they use this to try to find in social media these bots where they're not real people.
Yeah.
Because the number of friends they have and stuff like this doesn't follow these sequences.
Wow.
And almost every time it comes out, it's a computer and not a real person.
I gotta look into this.
We
Rob.
tend to follow sequences and patterns that the computers don't, because they're more random.
Yeah.
We are less random than we think.
We're.
But that's what I'm saying. There's a design in everything that God put into it.
Even in our thinking.
Even in our thinking.
Yeah.
And we think when we look at the trees and the patterns and the branches that it's random. No, that's Fibonacci sequences. If you look up what Fibonacci is, the number patterns are there in everything.
So Fibonacci, was that a Japanese fellow?
No, I think it's Italian.
Italian, Fibonacci?
Yeah.
How do you spell that?
F-I-B, let's see.
A-N?
Probably.
Anyway, I got to look into some of this, because I find that interesting, really.
F-I-B-O-N.
Oh, you do too.
F-I-B-O-N-A-C-C-I.
O-N-A-C-C-I. Okay.
And it is a mathematical sequence that is found in almost everything.
Everything.
And it's like growth patterns. You know, and
it's almost like nature's DNA, huh?
Well, actual DNA seems to follow these same patterns, and it goes to show how when things grow, they don't grow randomly. They grow in a progression that is almost exponential, but it follows, like the easiest way to see is look at a seashell that starts as a small spiral, but it gets real big real fast.
Yeah.
That's a Fibonacci sequence when you measure the ratios of the spiral going around. But that's found in the way branches expand in a tree. It's found in the way arteries expand in veins in your body. It's found in nature, in forests, how many trees grow based upon sunlight and all this stuff.
So you have to ask yourself, when you know these things, you have to ask yourself, why? Why is it like this? I mean,
I think part of it is it makes things simple. When they all follow the exact same pattern, no matter how big or small they are, in a way, it makes it simple, and it makes it by design.
Exactly. It is by design. That's exactly right, Rob. And listen to this. This is very interesting. Now, Psalm 91, okay? Looking at verse 17. And let the beauty of the Lord our God be upon us, and establish thou the work of our hands upon us. Yea, the work of our hands establish thou it. Notice this. And this is from, let's see. This is from Steps to Christ, I think. Where am I here? Let's see, make sure I'm in the right place. Nope, I want 91, verses 1 to 6. He that dwelleth in the secret place. I'm in the wrong place, okay. He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. He's my refuge, my strength, okay? And so we don't want to be afraid or for the terror by night, or for the arrow that flieth by day, or for the pestilence that walketh in darkness. Okay, we're in pestilence. Nor for the destruction that wasteth at noonday. Okay, and this from, let's see, I was going to read Steps to Christ, page 86, okay? And now I've lost that, okay? But I'll bring it back to you, okay? From, let's see. I have another text, too, that I wanted to share with you. Let's see. Let me go back. I'll find it here. Here it is. Talking about our immediate dependence on God for life, okay? And this actually was from Nehemiah. This is Nehemiah. That was part of our reading in Sunday's lesson. Nehemiah chapter 9, verse 6. Thou, even thou, art Lord alone. Thou hast made heaven, the heaven of heavens, with all their hosts, the earth and all things that are therein, the seas and all that is therein, the seashells, Rob, right? And thou preservest them all, and the host of heaven worshipeth thee. And then I wanted to read this comment. This is from Education, page 131. Okay, listen to this. Our immediate dependence on God for life. The power of God is still exercised in upholding the objects of his creation. We are the objects of his creation, aren't we? Part of that, anyway. It is not because the mechanism once set in motion continues to act by its own inherent energy that the pulse beats. Whatever that pulse is, right? And breath follows breath. Every pulsation of the heart is an evidence of the care of him in whom we live and move and have our being. From the smallest insect to man, every living creature is daily dependent upon his providence. Every living creature. Okay? Amazing. So it tells us, center of the page, Romans 1:18-21, Psalm 19, 1-6. Okay? And that's the one that we just went over. All right? And it says, what do they tell us about God's work as our creator? Hey, number one, he's got absolute control over it all, does he not? Absolute control. Every beat of your heart, every breath. Okay? and all the heaven worship him. Okay? We're without excuse in our beliefs due to the evidence that is presented, not only in our own bodies, but in all of nature. And as we look out, I am astounded just by what I saw last night, by watching seeing the pictures from the Hubble telescope. I am just absolutely astounded by what we know of the universe, the known universe. And I think I told you this once before, that when they look just in the cup of the Big Dipper, with the telescope, the big telescope at Mount Palomar, which is not the strongest on Earth anymore, okay, but with that telescope, they see what they estimate is no fewer than 30 million galaxies.
Well, the deep field picture that they put out from the Hubble that shows 5,000 galaxies in the one picture.
Yeah.
They say if you were to take the head of a pin and hold it in the sky, that's how big that area is that they're looking at, these 5,000. Because when you zoom into space that far, you're looking at such a tiny speck. You can't look at a big area and see that far.
Yeah. It is, well, anyway, it is phenomenal.
And apparently they look in every direction and see basically the same thing.
Let me tell you what I think of when I see things like this, and it kind of, in fact, Penny commented. She said, "You know what? I can't look at things like this for very long. It just blows my mind, and it does me too. I can't. I can't, it's my imaginings. Here's what I imagine. I imagine that when we're taken and we have the privilege of angels and of traveling from planet to planet and all the worlds that God has made in all the galaxies that he has made, I just imagine what it's going to be like. I try to imagine in my mind's eye what that will be like to be able to go to these places and to see.
Don't worry about not seeing everything because you'll have eternity to go
That's,
find it.
that's right. Well, are you worried that you haven't been to GC 437? Don't worry about that.
Well,
It can be on your list 10 million years from now.
what's really mind-blowing is when they look at these pictures that we're seeing, because we know how far these things are away.
Yeah, how many light years?
What we're seeing is where it was thousands, if not millions of years ago.
Yeah.
We don't know where it is today.
That's right, what you're
So
saying.
this thing could be a whole lot bigger today than we can even imagine.
That's right.
Because we're looking at
Yeah.
ancient history when we look at
How-
the
yes,
light
how
that
true.
we're seeing now.
Yeah, those stars could have burned out 40 million years ago. Who knows,
Well,
right?
we're assuming that things burn out. I don't think they do with God.
Well, I mean, I think there are, we have explosions and we still see those, quasars and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, like fireworks, right?
Yeah, right. The author says, even after 6,000 years of sin and thousands of years after the worldwide devastation of the flood, that's 4,000, right? Here we are. Overwhelmingly powerful evidence exists not just for God as our creator, but for the power and love and benevolence of this God as our creator, okay? And the last paragraph there on Sunday's portion, especially in a day and age in which many humans have come to worship the creation rather than the creator, how crucial that Christian education in the arts and sciences always works from the assumption that God is the creator and sustainer of all that exists. How important to know that, right? Author asks the question, think about the incredible wonder and beauty of our world even after sin. How can we learn to draw hope and comfort from it, especially in times like these, personal trials and suffering that's going on? How can we do that?
Well, I think one thing you look at in the grand scheme of things, we're talking about how big it all is.
Yeah.
How important were we for him to come and die for this speck of the
This little
universe?
speck. Yeah.
Um,
And even the
that's
Milky
hard. That's hard to comprehend. And
Yeah.
like Penny was saying,
Yeah.
when you start looking at the scope and size of his creation, to think that he would do that,
It's so
it's hard to really wrap your mind around.
And then, beyond that, yes, it is, Rob, but even beyond that, what gets to me is to think that God is going to make this headquarters of the universe. Milky Way is just a medium-sized galaxy right now. I don't know how it'll be like, what it'll be like when recreation takes place and you get to watch it.
But see, what that goes to prove is how great his love is. If he would abandon,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
not, and it's not, he had a choice, but he didn't. Because if you really believe that love is what it is, that choice basically
Yeah.
is not really there. When it happened,
He was
he
ready.
just had to do it.
He was ready. He had to do it because he loves us.
And for this speck of creation, but was created in his image, to do what he had to do, to come here to face evil
Mm-hmm.
and make it appear that it overcame him, because he died.
Yeah.
But
You win.
But in that, he became the overcomer.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he did it not for himself.
In dying, he lives.
He did it for this speck, for us.
Great, yeah, and there's a great lesson in that too, when you think about how much of the world believes in life hereafter. It goes back to the first lie. We listened to Dwight Nelson, great sermon. Most of the Christian world and other parts, other religions too, don't believe that you die.
Well, I mean,
That you don't, it goes back to the first lie. You
the
won't
big
die.
delusion that we're believing, that God says he'll send a delusion. Those that believe, that don't believe in him or believe these things, they believe they're bigger than that universe.
Yeah.
They believe they're more important than everything else out there. What a delusion that is.
Yeah, right.
When you look at the speck
Who-
we are.
Who do you think you are, right? Just-
But in reality, isn't that what everyone that chooses sin believes? That they are greater than God?
yeah. Or that they are God, or that they
Same
are
thing,
gods.
same
Yeah,
thing.
Yeah, right, yeah. So on this question that the author asks, I said, he is in control, all right, of the affairs of men, and even in control over elections. Remember that, okay? He's the one who sets up and takes down, right?
But there is a limitation when love's involved.
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
the freedom to choose to reject always has to be part of that equation.
Yeah, we always have that choice, don't we, Rob?
And
Always
that's
have
where
that choice.
I bring that in, because some people take the he's in control a little too far, to the point that, that the choices are no longer,
Yeah, it's
there.
not yours.
Yeah.
No, you can't take that away.
no.
That's right.
So there is a limitation to his power because of love.
Because of love. Yeah. And of course we do not believe in predestination.
Not in that minute speck. We believe that we are all predestined to be saved,
Yes.
but we are
By
that
choice.
But
Yes.
we have, because the gift is offered to all. But we
Yeah,
are not.
it is
we
offered
are
to
not
everyone.
forced to accept that gift.
That is correct. Yeah, there's no force involved. That's right. Monday's portion, the beauty of holiness. Okay? Psalm 96:9 reads, "O worship the Lord in the beauty of holiness. Tremble before him all the earth." Why would you worship him in the first place, and why would you tremble before him? What's happening here? What is the psalmist saying? Okay? This is Psalm 96, verse 9, okay? Fear before him all the earth, worshiping him in the beauty of holiness. We're talking about beauty here. Beauty has a different definition in every mind here. We all have a different perception of what beauty is, right? I think so. I think if I asked each one of you to describe what is beautiful, what beauty means to you, I'd probably get this many answers, different answers from everyone. How do we describe it, this beauty of holiness?
The perfection of love.
The perfection of love?
Because,
Yes.
the entire object of worship is thankfulness for who he is, what he's done for us. But I think the trembling part of those that don't accept it.
That, but also,
Because,
Yeah.
there is an aspect of we are sinners,
yeah,
and in his presence,
His holiness
without his grace,
yeah,
we are doomed.
we're finished.
So we should have that respect, but then in the reality of understanding the perfection of his love, that drives all fear away of those that love him.
And
Those that don't, the devils believe and do what?
tremble.
There you go.
Right. Yeah, the devils believe and they tremble. Yeah, yeah. Before his holiness, before his greatness, even before his goodness, because the angels that have fallen, they know of his love. They know the kind of ruler he is.
Well, and they know that in the end, they cannot be permitted to torment those that choose him.
Yeah,
It's a rescue mission.
yeah. It's a wonderful thing. Boy, it feels good to be rescued, doesn't it? Huh? From this old world and all that's going on in here. Oh, man. About mid-page on Monday, study of arts. Yes, go ahead, Connie.
The prosperity preachers have corrupted beauty of holiness.
Yes.
And that's a problem with all the churches, even ours,
It's-
our beauty is the beauty of Christmas, the beauty
Yeah,
of,
yeah.
seeing, even the beauty of seeing happiness of a child's face
Yeah.
when you give them a gift. That is even, that beauty has lost its true meaning.
It's been spoiled.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you for the word, I can figure it out.
But you're right.
But our concept of beauty has been lost.
Yeah. Yeah, and what it should be is the beauty of his character and his holiness and his care for us, his love, his character, his holiness. Yeah, that is what we should really be appreciating. So, about halfway down the page, study of arts and sciences can and should then draw us closer to the character and the heart of God, because we are a part of God's own artwork and scientific phenomena. We also can learn more about our own identity with Christ. Okay? I love this. This is Steps to Christ, page 85. God would have his children appreciate his works and delight in the simple, quiet beauty with which he has adorned our earthly home. He is a lover of the beautiful, and above all that is outwardly attractive, he loves beauty of character. He would have us cultivate purity and simplicity, the quiet graces of the flowers. This is exactly what Connie was alluding to. We've lost it. Satan, if he had his way, would completely obliterate a correct view of beauty.
Well, what we're trying to do, we're trying to find it in ways that leave God absent from the picture in our own ways.
Yeah.
I mean, in a way, that's no different than what addicts do.
Yeah. Yeah. It's escaping from reality, isn't it? Huh?
Well, you're looking for a way to achieve something that is temporary and fake.
Yeah, that's well put, Rob. Yeah. When you do it, yeah. Yeah. Genesis 3 verse 6 says this, okay? And we're talking about, we're still on the beauty of holiness, Monday's portion, okay? We're down at the bottom. Read Genesis verse 3, verse 6. Okay, here we go. To the word. And when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was pleasant to the eyes, and a tree to be desired to make one wise, she took the fruit thereof, and did eat, and gave also unto her husband with her, and he did eat. Okay? So what was she dependent on? She saw it look good. She saw that it was pleasant to the eye, right?
It didn't look harmful.
It didn't look harmful. I mean, hey, the devil's in the tree, and she didn't know he was the devil, did she? He was disguised. He didn't say, "Hi there, my name is Satan. Nice to meet you, Eve." None of that. Oh, no. And here's a serpent that could talk. Well, that goes back to what you said earlier, Rob, in a couple of lessons ago. We're told that that serpent was more beautiful, could fly, Now it's been, since then, has been to the ground, to dust, right? It has to eat the dust, okay?
I mean, we tend to forget God created everything perfect,
Yes.
including Satan,
Yes.
Lucifer, and he was the most beautiful of all.
He was.
That's why his heart led to that. So he was not this, horned red pitchfork.
Right.
There was nothing in the appearance that would signal danger.
Yeah.
Just the opposite.
Whoa.
Just the opposite.
Obviously.
He would actually, most likely, have an imitation of the glory of God that they were used to seeing.
And remember, all of the angels were created with great intelligence, okay? He just happened to be at the top of the heap at the time.
And this wasn't very long from the fall. So, I mean, the degeneration of sin was not real, had not affected him as much.
Yeah.
We're told through the spirit of prophecy that his countenance has changed over the years.
Yeah.
But still,
Forehead flat.
he
right?
can imitate the appearance of glory.
Yeah.
And he will
Well, he will.
someday.
Oh, yeah. I just was reading about that and how people will be. And in fact, the sermon this last sermon by Dwight Nelson that we listened to was, wow, pretty spectacular. Dwight's easy to listen to anyway, but boy, oh boy. I mean, he talked about that. You know, he's going to, you know, and these two great errors, you know, immortality of the soul and Sunday sacredness, going to drive almost all of Christianity right to him. Okay, and he in the sermon that we listened to, he said, can you imagine, you know, when you've lost your mother, your father, a brother, a sister, a good friend, a child, and suddenly, you know, at the side of your bed while you're there, comes to you and says,
isn't that what
"Hi,
happened
Mommy."
with Saul and what he believed to be Samuel
Yeah.
that he was speaking with?
Uh-huh.
Was that Samuel?
Uh-huh. No. That's right. So, it says thus, going on to kind of wrap up Monday's portion, thus, especially in the arts, Christian education guided by Scripture must help us learn to be careful, right? In understanding that not all that is beautiful is necessarily good for us or holy, right? Just because it's beautiful to behold, tastes good, may not be good for you, right? And sure, not holy. All right. Tuesday's portion, experts in error, okay?
Just remember, there's only one way that Adam and Eve would have had any clue that there was danger in that tree. And that's because God warned them beforehand.
Oh, yes, yeah. He forewarned them.
And
They were forearmed,
that's
right?
the same thing with what's coming. We're given a Bible that has basically an indication of what's going to happen.
That's right.
We may not know specifically each play, but we
Yeah.
know we have a warning
Yeah.
basically contrasting the true versus the counterfeit.
A counterfeit, yeah.
And that tree was a counterfeit they were warned to stay away from.
Yeah. Yeah. Experts in error, okay? We know that our world has more than its share of art and philosophy that does not honor God. And it goes on to say, Seventh-day Adventist Christians must carefully consider their own business, okay, in serving certain industries. I thought, yeah, there are some industries that I wouldn't be involved in as a Seventh-day Adventist Christian, you know. I could probably get a job up near Cartersville. There's a Budweiser plant up there. Okay, I could probably be a good brewer if I wanted to be. I would not do that. I could maybe get a job over in Winston-Salem making cigarettes. I would not do that. I'll never forget the first time that I ever went into Winston-Salem, huge billboard outside the city as you drive in. Said 1 million Winstons a day. They were making 1 million Winston cigarettes a day. And I thought, horrible ad, right?
What about cookie factories?
What about the cookie factory? All right, yeah, okay. Yeah,
It's a
right.
little closer to home, doesn't it?
Yeah, it sure do. That's right, yeah.
I mean,
The sugar bombs?
We know it's not good for us. We know it's good for us.
Yeah.
Like you're pointing out. You're
And-
pointing out the things that are on the
On the
further,
outside.
more
Yeah, yeah.
less
I know.
controversial in on whether or
Mhm.
not they're
I know.
aligned. But there are other things that. Is it good?
Yeah. And yet this is weird because not all, but much of the funding that's been made through that has done marvelous things for God's work. So it's kind of a dichotomy, isn't it? It's weird anyway, okay? But certain industries, okay, patronizing certain establishments, okay, you need to be careful where you go. Okay, to do your business, all right?
You know,
And
isn't it
consuming certain...
Isn't it interesting that in this pandemic, those type of establishments are the first ones to be looked at as a problem and closed down?
That is interesting. I thought that, yeah.
Whether it
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
social places or movie theaters or whatever,
Yeah.
the congregating type places that are
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting, yeah. And then, of course, he says, or consuming certain media, just what you were talking about. Okay. 1 Timothy, the 6th chapter, be careful if you're rich. Okay? This is where he comes out and says, the love of money is the root of all evil. Not money. Money is not the root of all evil. It is the love of it. Okay? And do you understand why it's very difficult for a rich person to be spiritual? Do you know what's happening there?
What will happen to the money we still have when he shows up?
Yeah, that's a good question, Rob. Rob says, what will happen to the money when he shows up? What's going to happen to all the money you have? Poof, right? Gone. Just like the statue with Nebuchadnezzar. When that rock hits, into dust, right? Nothing left.
It was Gandhi, if I remember the story, that said, I don't remember what trail it's on, but he wrote that when you become financially stable, you're at the highest risk of becoming spiritually bankrupt.
Wow. Gandhi said that?
I think it was Gandhi that said that.
Ah, well, that makes sense, doesn't it? And you know, it's harder for a rich man to enter into the kingdom than for a camel to pass through the eye of the needle. I mean, gotta get way down, don't you? The camel had to kneel way down to get through that needle's eye, to get into the city.
Well, I
doesn't
think,
mean you can't get in, but it's hard. It's hard.
well, I think there's several reasons for that, but a couple that come to mind is one way people gain riches is on taking advantage of others. That's one way.
On the backs of the less fortunate, right?
And another way is they may inherit it, but then, you know, growing up in a rich society is not always your best upbringing spiritually, is it?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so I think it's very easy. And important now, you know, when we read the Proverbs, when you read what Solomon had to say, and, you know, nobody was wiser. Nobody will ever be wiser on the earth.
Or richer in a sense.
Or richer in a sense than Solomon himself. And in the end, what did he say? All is vanity. It's all vanity. You know, it's all for yourself.
One who builds and another inhabits.
Yeah, right. One
But they
who
say
builds and
that
another
won't
inhabits.
happen in heaven.
Yeah, right, exactly. So the rest of 1 Timothy chapter 6, the key pursuits that Paul endorses, what? Righteousness and godliness and faith and love, patience and meekness, and to fight that good fight of faith. What does it mean to fight the good fight of faith? What does that mean to fight the good fight of faith? What does that mean to you?
You're always fighting against yourself. Because,
Yeah.
I mean, that's the hardest, at least for me, is...
Yeah. To have faith that God can fix you?
No, I think it's more of not putting yourself first in things.
Well, and that's just we're talking about.
And I don't
Yeah.
care what economic level you're at. And I don't care because it's driven by fear, greed, you know, all that stuff. Trying to not let that drive you. And that's where Paul, I think, talks about dying daily.
Yeah, you know, yes, yeah. And dying daily, you know what that does? It builds humility. Huh? Doesn't it? Dying daily? Yeah. And it's, you know, I think there was a country and western song out, John. There was a country and western song out there that said it's hard to be humble. And I don't remember the rest of any of the words, but I did remember that. That was way back when I must have been, 64 or 5 or something like that. I'm really that old. Anyway,
Well,
Lord, it's hard to be humble.
I saw one of the most ironic things this week at the mall. This car, and it was like the most decked out car I'd ever seen.
Yeah.
Sticker on the back window said Hoonigan, you know, those guys that do the racing. And right underneath it said humble. I'm like, well, that doesn't quite fit.
This decked out vehicle. Yeah, and even then, we you know, I don't, how to say this? I don't, I think humility is different for every one of us. And I mean, it comes forth in a different way for every one of us. I don't think it's the same for everybody. But I'll tell you what, it is recognizable in every one of us. However it falls for you, other people will recognize when you're being humble. I think that's true. All right? 1 Timothy 6:20, Paul warns against what is falsely called science. Okay? And what he's talking about is God versus science, right? So this is, it says, he goes on the last paragraph on Tuesday. He says, for nearly 2,000 years, the world's smartest people, the experts, believed that the earth sat immobile in the center of the universe. Whoops, got that one wrong, right? Okay. And so this was their expert opinions. What they really believed in their heart of hearts was false. Okay? It was falsely called knowledge, all right? Science, so-called, can be in error.
It was false.
Yeah.
But it was taken from the perspective. I mean, we see the sun go over and around. It looks like the sun's going around us, right?
That's right. Yeah.
You know, it looks.
Yeah. Whoever thought that it could be the other way
I
around?
mean, the moon is going around us, but the sun and moon appear to be doing the same thing from our perspective.
Yeah.
The stars and all are rotating around.
That's right.
From the wrong perspective and the wrong understanding, it would appear that that was true. And for a long time, the smartest people in the world, the astrologers and all these stuff, that's what they believed, because that's how it appeared. Without the right tools, instruments, and understanding, why wouldn't it look that way?
Well, until Galileo, right? Was it
I
Galileo?
don't know the whole science on who. I know
Was
he
it Galileo?
He was the telescope and all this stuff. Was he the first to try to understand?
Yeah.
I know that there was like Plato and some of these had different.
But you have to wonder what you know, if the spiritual, and of course I think of when you consider that this earth, remade, recreated, will be the headquarters of the universe. You know, the New Jerusalem is going to be right here.
But that's not because the universe revolves around us. That's because the king of the universe will be here.
That's right. Exactly.
Yet there is a whole group of people out there that are convinced that this earth is still flat.
I just can't believe that. How can you believe that when you go out to the ocean and watch a sailboat go, or any ship go on over the curve of the earth, and pretty soon it's out of sight? I mean, if it was flat, wouldn't it remain in sight?
I don't get their concept, but I've read it and I can't.
They honestly believe that. Yeah.
Well, you know, one of the more bizarre groups like that, if you want to go to South Florida, there's actually I think it's a tarot discount. There's a group of, it was from a long time ago. They're mostly gone by now, but they lived out on themselves. They believed, the earth was here in the center, but there was a giant sphere that we were inside, and everything we were looking at was projected on the inside surface of that sphere. Whoa. And they have models of this in their worship centers. And this was from like 100 years ago, but it lasted up until the 1970s when the last of them donated this land to the state, and they made a park out of it as a historical site. But you look at some of these bizarre beliefs, and they had true believers.
Oh, yeah. Well, Jim Jones, okay, many others. You know, who knows how many others. Wednesday's portion, foolishness and wisdom, okay? Proverbs Chapter 1. What does this teach us? What true Christian education should be about. Okay? Starts out, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, right? What is wisdom?
But see, the other side of it is, wisdom is correct, in my opinion, is the correct application of knowledge.
Yes, I think so too.
But you know,
correct according
for people to be believers and reject science completely is also not wisdom.
No.
Because science is an application of understanding of what we observe.
Yes.
God, since he created it, is actually a part of all science. true
Yeah.
understanding of science rightly applies his principles into it.
Right. That is the correct application of knowledge. That is wisdom. And that's what God wants us to have, right? And to abound in it.
And that's why Daniel was shown to be 10 times greater than
10
all those
times.
around him, because he did that.
Yeah.
He took
Yeah.
the knowledge that they had of the world and the science
Yeah.
and
Applied
applied
it correctly.
God's creative powers to it and his finger on it. And it gave him an understanding that exceeded everyone by at least 10 times from
Yeah.
what we know.
10 times, yeah. Yeah. 10 times. That's right.
And that, I believe, is more of an expression showing how much greater it was. You can't quantify specifically, but the king perceived it as that,
Yeah.
and that's a big deal.
Yeah. So when you think about artistic brilliance, when you think about scientific innovation, scientific breakthrough, what do you think of? There was actually a journal. I think this guy started U.S. News. Okay, his name, it turned out to be U.S. News and World Report. David Lawrence was his name. And when he saw the pictures of the bomb that went off, I don't know if it was Hiroshima or Nagasaki. You remember those famous words? What hath man wrought? What has happened here? And he of course, at the time, I think he wrote an article about it. He said it's no longer necessary for us to have, hand-to-hand combat. There's no need for that anymore. We've got atomic weapons. We can just wipe out the other side. And of course, he was one who said, look, he thought the Japanese were getting ready to surrender anyway. But of course, there were other forces that said, look, we'd have lost 30,000 more men if we'd have tried to take Japan. If we'd have tried to make a landing in Japan in the Second World War. But anyway, this is what we're talking about is, what good is knowledge of the arts and sciences really, if it does not mean knowing it from God's perspective? What good is it? I mean, for any of us. And how then can we be sure that it's properly applied, that it's correctly applied? Remember, wisdom is knowledge correctly applied, right? Properly applied. Proverbs 1 verse 7. Let's look at it. Turn to Proverbs. Who's got it? If you got it, go ahead and read it. I'm getting there. Proverbs 1 verse 7. I'm at Psalm 150 here. I'm close. Proverbs 1 verse 7. Listen to wisdom. And this is it. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. Fools despise that. So, respect for God is wisdom's beginning. Okay? Respect for God. Not when it says fear, it means respect. You could call it holy regard, absolute. Keep trying to find the words here, Connie. Absolute respect. Absolute. Anyway, holding him up as high as can be held in human regard, right? Okay. But fools despise wisdom and instruction. And I thought, why is that? Why is it that a fool despises that?
Because they look at themselves.
Well, and
Because they look at themselves, Connie
and they
says.
think that their behavior isn't a problem and won't be a problem later. Isn't that what that instruction does? It teaches us the behavior that's destructive to us and tries to correct it.
Yeah.
A fool is one that says, this behavior won't harm me later.
A fool in his heart says what? There is no God, right? A fool says there is no
They
God.
despise reproach, instruction, because they don't think they need it.
Yep.
And they are going down a road of heartache and destruction and don't even realize it. And that's why they're a fool.
Yeah. Yeah. Boy, I'll tell you what, let us avoid foolishness, huh? Let us avoid. God bless us to avoid foolishness, to be careful in our instruction, right? One Nobel Prize winner, an atheist, a man who studies the universe and the physical forces behind it, wrote, "The more the universe seems comprehensible, the more it also seems pointless." And the author asks us this question: what should this tell us about how knowledge in and of itself can not only be meaningless, but even worse, lead to gross error?
Well, I mean, kind of like
if
you
you
were talking
don't-
about the sky and the universe.
Yeah.
If you think about it too much, you can look at it and say it's so big, so massive, God can't be possibly in control of the whole thing.
Yes, yes. And you know what? It is pointless. It is pointless if there is no God. What is the point if there is no God? And I thought, yeah, it makes sense. What the guy says makes sense if you're an atheist, right? But it does make sense to us because we believe, right? We know he's coming again. Thursday's portion, the Lord answered Job, all right? And it tells you to read Job 38, and on the notes on that, it says, what does this teach us about God? He formed us. He formed the universe. He sustains it all. Nothing happens that he doesn't know about or allowed to happen. Allow to happen, okay?
Well, not only that, in a way, he's putting Job in his place.
Yes.
And we
Yes.
all should be that.
Yes.
We weren't there.
Yeah, were you there?
We didn't
Do you know
have
the
any
treasures
control
of the
or
snow,
power over
of the
that.
hail?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Here's this beautiful explanation. Many teach that matter possesses vital power, that certain properties are imparted to matter, and it is then left to act through its own inherent energy, and that the operations of nature are conducted in harmony with fixed laws, which God himself cannot interfere. This is false science and is not sustained by the Word of God. Nature is the servant of her Creator. Nature testifies of an intelligence, a presence, an active energy that works in and through her laws. There is in nature the continual working of the Father and the Son. Christ says, "My Father worketh hitherto, and I work." That's just a beautiful explanation of that, okay?
Well,
Yeah,
and the interesting thing about science and exploring all these things, we can explain the reality. We can explain gravity exists. You drop something, boom. Why does that happen?
Yeah, exactly.
Gets a lot more complicated.
Uh-huh, yeah.
The whys are much less understood than
Than the fact.
than the laws of
Yeah,
that it happens.
Then the law, yeah, right, yeah. Mm-hmm, yeah.
I mean,
Why-
we have come up with many what we think are explanations for these things, and they tend to change over time, some dramatically.
Yeah, why doesn't water boil at 210?
Well,
Why does it take 212?
Well, actually, it does, depending upon your altitude.
Well, yeah, there you go. Yeah, that's dependent upon God's creative works, right? Yeah, okay. Science, as now constituted, argues that the very idea of a supernatural creature is unscientific, since it cannot be tested scientifically, and thus it is a notion that science cannot deal with. This presupposition is not anything that science itself teaches. In fact, science would seem to teach the opposite, till the beauty and complexity of the world do. Did I read that right? All the beauty and complexity of the world do indeed point to a creator.
Let me throw you one quick one in science that most people don't see and understand. When things freeze, they shrink.
Yeah. No,
Except-
they
everything.
expand.
That's
Huh?
only water.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, right. There you go. Yeah.
Everything else shrinks
Yeah.
and becomes more dense.
Yeah.
Water expands.
Yeah.
If water was to shrink, every fish in every freshwater thing
Would
would
die.
die because the
Sure.
ice would shrink to the bottom, refreeze, shrink, and the lake would freeze solid.
Yeah.
So
right.
if water
Pretty
didn't
neat.
expand when it froze, it would kill all life forms in fresh water.
Isn't that interesting?
And it's
Yeah.
the only substance we know of that actually expands when it freezes
When it-
instead of shrinks. So
Yeah.
why it happens, I don't think we understand.
Don't
But
get that.
but because it does that, it preserves life.
Yeah, isn't that neat? Boy, I'll tell you, what a wonderful creator we have, right? The philosophy that scientists have is actually self-imposed. Most scientists. God sustains everything. We know that. All right. Well, it's time to wrap it up here. This is for further thought. Two reasons exist why science, which gets so many things right, gets origins so wrong. First, science, which studies the natural world, must look only to the natural world for answers. Which studies the natural world. Okay, they have to look only to the natural world for answers. Second, science assumes that the laws of nature must remain constant. Yet both these are wrong when it comes to origins. You know, when you if you believe in the God of heaven and a creator, then actually, and especially a loving creator, and that his character is love, then there are a lot of things that simply we don't understand, we can't explain. You know, the gravity, why ice expands, you know, a lot of things that we simply can't explain. We know about them, they're physical happenings, but difficult to explain. We'll know better by and by, won't we, when the time comes? Yeah.
And
Well-
you know, all the important thing, everything that we do know and everything we've learned are things that have been revealed by God to us. They didn't just come from our own knowledge.
Yeah.
So even if we discover something in nature and science, that's because God revealed it through that.
Yeah, right. And this will happen more and more as we spend time with him, right, in the Word. All right, well, let's close with prayer, shall we? Father, we thank you so much for this opportunity to gather together, both electronically and in this sanctuary today. So grateful for these Sabbath hours that we can spend with you and with each other. So thankful for your Spirit's presence, not only here, but in our lives. We are glad for your presence in our lives to guide us, to bring us to wisdom and to help us to correctly apply the knowledge that you bless us with. And so we pray that that will happen and that you will keep us in your care this day. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you, everyone.